He's winning the tournament.
Eala?
Yep.
Oh,
Wow. Why do you say that?
mic drop from Anacomb.
I don't have to elaborate.
August 10th, 2026. A Monday in New York. The US Open main draw is just 14 days away, and the grounds at Flushing Meadows are already coming alive with sponsor crews and construction teams. Hospitality tents are rising behind Arthur Ashe Stadium like sails on the horizon. Half a world away in Melbourne, it is the heart of the Australian winter. Rod Laver Arena sits dark, with the next Australian Open still 5 months away. Between those two cities, between a tournament that has yet to begin and another that is already months behind us, a press release quietly lands from Marriott's Asia-Pacific office. It is brief. There is no headline dollar figure, no contract length, no flashy announcement of a major deal. It says one thing very clearly. Alex Eala is now the face of Marriott Bonv, Tennis the World campaign across Asia-Pacific, excluding China, and the timing is the part you should pay attention to. This happened 10 days before the US Open, not 10 days after it. That distinction matters because the entire sports marketing industry is built around the opposite instinct. Brands usually wait. They sign the winner. They watch the Grand Slam unfold, see the trophy lifted, watch the highlight reels dominate social media, and then open the checkbook. Marriott did something different. Marriott moved early. And when a company of that size moves early on a 20-year-old ranked number 20 in the world, the most interesting question isn't, how much did she get paid? The more important question is, what did Marriott see that the rest of the market had not priced in yet? That is what this video is about. Not the deal itself, the timing of the deal. A lot of the coverage right now is treating this like a standard sponsorship story. Famous player, famous brand, major partnership, congratulations, move on. And I understand why that framing is tempting. It fits the algorithm, but it misses what actually happened here. More importantly, it misses what this could tell us about where Alex Eala's career is heading over the next 3 years, not merely the next 3 weeks. Because the reason the signing date matters more than the signing amount is simple. Timing is the one thing a sports marketing deal cannot fake. The number can be negotiated. The contract length can be negotiated. The perks can be negotiated. Even the language of the press release can be carefully crafted. But timing is a decision. Timing is a bet, and Marriott placed that bet at a very specific moment, for very specific reasons. If you understand those reasons, you begin to understand something about Eala's actual market value that very few people are discussing yet. Before we get there, if you're new to this channel, I go deep on WTA storylines, especially the ones that mainstream tennis coverage tends to overlook. If you enjoy this kind of long-form analysis, consider subscribing. It helps keep this type of reporting going. Now, a quick reset for anyone who is just discovering the Eala story. Alex Eala is a 20-year-old professional tennis player from the Philippines. She turned professional in 2020 and spent her development years at the Rafa Nadal Academy in Mallorca. Until this summer, she was a top 50 player with a relatively small but intensely loyal following and a reputation that was growing faster than her ranking. Then, over roughly 6 weeks in the middle of 2026, 3 things happened that changed the category she belonged in. First came Wimbledon. Eala defeated defending champion Iga Swiatek in the 3rd round, winning in straight sets 7-6, 6-2 on centre court. That was the kind of result the tennis world notices. Then came the DC Open at the beginning of August. Eala put together the most disruptive week of her career, defeating Jessica Pegula, Elina Svitolina, and Naomi Osaka on her way to the first WTA singles title of her career. It was also the first WTA singles title won by a Filipino player. Then, on August 4th, the day after the trophy ceremony, the WTA rankings were updated. Eala was officially world number 20, a career high, and the highest ranking ever achieved by a Filipino player. That is the player Marriott signed 6 days later. Those are the coordinates. And now the story gets strange. Paradox 1: if Marriott wanted a US Open bounce, if the entire purpose of the partnership was to attach its brand to whatever Eala was about to accomplish at Flushing Meadows, the calendar makes very little sense. You don't normally announce a new ambassador 10 days before a Grand Slam. You announce the partnership during the Grand Slam, when the player is generating maximum exposure. Or you wait until after the tournament, when the highlight packages are already circulating and the brand can attach itself to the momentum. Every advertising executive who has built a media strategy around live sports understands this. Marriott understands it too, and yet Marriott did the opposite. They signed Eala before the US Open. They moved when her most recent result was a fourth-round loss to Belinda Bencic at the Canadian Open. And that loss came in front of a sold-out Toronto night session, where thousands of tickets reportedly moved at extraordinary speed once her name was announced. Hold on to that detail. It becomes important later. But first, sit with the paradox. Marriott moved before the US Open, not after it. That was a choice. So what did Marriott see? Paradox 2. The campaign Eala is fronting is called Tennis the World. And the central destination behind that campaign isn't the US Open. It isn't Wimbledon, it isn't Roland Garros, it is the Australian Open. Marriott Bonvoy has been an official hotel partner of the Australian Open, and the 2027 tournament is scheduled for January. The announcement specifically highlights benefits for Marriott Bonvoy members, including early access to Australian Open tickets and exclusive experiences. Think about what that means. The world number 20 player in women's tennis is reaching the peak of her US Open build-up, yet Marriott has signed her to promote a tournament happening on the other side of the world several months from now. Why? Hold that question. Because there's another layer. Paradox 3. Marriott didn't simply sign Eala for Asia-Pacific. They signed her for Asia-Pacific excluding China. Read the announcement carefully. The regional carve-out is right there. Think about that for a moment. China is one of the biggest tennis markets in Asia. It has major tournaments, enormous commercial potential, large audiences, and an entire section of the WTA calendar built around Chinese venues. So if you were creating a tennis ambassador strategy for Asia-Pacific, China would seem like the obvious market to include. But Marriott drew a line: Southeast Asia, South Asia, Oceania, Japan, Korea, and other markets across the region. But not China. Why? That's question number 3. Hold it. Paradox 4, and this one might be the quietest, but potentially the loudest. The Marriott announcement does not disclose a dollar figure. It also does not disclose some extraordinary personal perk for Eala. You've probably seen numbers circulating online. $2 million a year, unlimited first-class flights, luxury travel packages, even figures in the hundreds of millions have appeared in some posts. But let's separate speculation from documentation. Those numbers are not stated in Marriott's official announcement. They are not part of the publicly disclosed deal terms. They have circulated through social media posts, aggregator channels, Facebook groups, and copy and paste stories that become slightly different every time they are reposted. What Marriott actually emphasizes is something very different. Australian Open presale access, Marriott Bonvoy moments, exclusive experiences, and benefits designed around the members. That distinction matters. Because the partnership isn't being presented primarily as a personal luxury package for Alex Eala. It is being presented as a way to connect Marriott Bonvoy members with tennis. So here's the fourth question: why does Marriott want its members closer to Alex Eala? Hold that too, because we're about to come back to all four. And this is where the assumption most people have made about this partnership starts to fall apart. The default assumption is that Marriott signed Alex Eala because Alex Eala is a rising tennis player. That's how sponsorship stories are usually told. Player becomes famous. Brand arrives, brand pays player. Player becomes a walking advertisement for the brand. It's an endorsement, it's familiar, it's easy. And in this case, I think that framing misses the larger strategy, because Marriott may not have signed Alex Eala simply because she is a tennis player. Marriott signed Alex Eala because she represents an unusually powerful entry point into a region where the company sees future value for its loyalty ecosystem. Tennis is the delivery mechanism. Eala is the delivery mechanism. The real product is Marriott Bonv membership. That changes everything. It explains why Marriott moved before the US Open. It explains why the campaign is anchored to Melbourne rather than New York. It explains the regional carve-out. And it explains why the most visible benefits in the announcement are directed toward Marriott Bonvoy members rather than toward Eala herself. She isn't necessarily the audience. The Marriott Bonvoy member is the audience. Eala is the person Marriott has chosen to speak to that audience. Once you look at the partnership through that lens, the four paradoxes stop looking like contradictions. They start looking like a strategy. Take a breath and sit with that for a moment. Because most sponsorship coverage reduces athletes to billboards. A deal gets announced, a number gets quoted, a few headlines appear, and everyone moves on. What Marriott appears to be doing with Eala is different. They aren't simply putting her on a billboard, they're writing her into a business strategy. And when a company uses an athlete not merely to advertise a product but to help build a market, the money question changes. It stops being, how much did they pay her? And becomes, how much does Marriott believe this market is worth? Now let's get into the proof. Proof 1. The timings start with the timing itself, and this is where the comparison to what you might call the Raducanu template becomes important. In September 2021, Emma Raducanu won the US Open as a qualifier. It was one of the most extraordinary breakthrough runs in modern tennis. And in the weeks that followed, she signed a long list of major commercial partners, including brands such as Tiffany, Dior, Vodafone, British Airways, Porsche and HSBC. The deals arrived after the Grand Slam. The market had seen the trophy. It had seen the television exposure. It had seen the global headlines. And then the sponsorship machine moved in. That is the traditional model, performance first, commercial pricing second. The problem is that a player's commercial value can become distorted when the market prices the athlete entirely around one extraordinary result. Raducanu's subsequent ranking fluctuations made that challenge particularly visible. The lesson for brands wasn't necessarily that breakthrough players shouldn't be signed. The lesson was that waiting until the absolute peak of the hype can mean paying the highest possible price for information everyone already has. And that is why Marriott's decision is interesting. They didn't wait for Eala's US Open result. They didn't wait to see whether she would make another deep Grand Slam run. They didn't wait for another trophy. They moved at world number 20, before the US Open, before the next major wave of exposure. Before the market had finished recalculating what Alex Eala could become. That isn't the Raducanu template. It's almost the opposite trade. Sign her at number 20, not when she's already number 2. And that may be the most revealing part of the entire deal. Sign her before the slam run pricing kicks in. Sign her as a market bet, not a momentum bet. That is a decision you cannot fake. You can change the contract value, you can negotiate the length, you can rewrite the press release. But you cannot rewrite the calendar. And Marriott's calendar tells us a lot. Proof number 2, the language. The second proof is the language Marriott chose to use. The announcement quotes John Toomey, Marriott's chief commercial officer for Asia Pacific excluding China. If you read enough sponsorship announcements, and I have, although I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, you learn to listen for one thing. What does the executive say the athlete represents? Because that is often where the real strategy is hiding. Marketing departments can fill a press release with polished language, but the executive quote is where you can sometimes see what the company actually believes it is buying. Look at the language Marriott used for Eala. Toomey described Alex as someone who embodies what Marriott Bonvoy stands for. He highlighted her authenticity, he called her inspiring, and then came the phrase that matters most, proudly connected to the region we serve. Think about what he did not say. He didn't call her the next Grand Slam champion, he didn't call her the next global tennis superstar, he didn't focus on her ranking. He didn't make the core argument about Wimbledon, the US Open, or her recent title. The operative language was about the region, her connection to that region, and Marriott's connection to that region. That is not an insignificant distinction. At that level of corporate marketing, executives do not choose every word randomly. Toomey was telling us why Eala fits the strategy. Tennis is the entry point, the region is the point. And that region is precisely where Marriott has identified major long-term growth potential for its loyalty business. Proof number 3, the market data. Now pause here, because the third proof is where the entire argument becomes much cleaner. If you had asked me beforehand whether Marriott's market research would line up perfectly with the language and timing of the Eala announcement, I would have expected some overlap. Maybe a little. Maybe enough to make the argument interesting. But the alignment is much stronger than that. Earlier in 2026, Marriott Bonvoy released a loyalty trends report covering Asia Pacific excluding China. Notice the regional definition. It is the same carve-out used in the Eala announcement. The same region, the same terminology, and the numbers are striking. According to the report, 89% of travelers across Asia Pacific excluding China participate in at least one loyalty program. In Vietnam, the figure reaches 96%. Think about what that means. Southeast Asia is not a region where loyalty programs are waiting to be introduced. They are already deeply embedded. The competition is not about convincing travelers that loyalty programs exist. The competition is about deciding which loyalty program earns their emotional attachment. And that is a much bigger commercial battle, because whoever wins that relationship doesn't just win the next booking. They potentially win years of travel behavior. Now put the pieces together. Marriott signs Eala before the US Open, before another Grand Slam run can reset her sponsorship price. They sign her for a region that mirrors the exact geographic carve-out in their own market research. They choose a Filipino athlete with a powerful connection to Southeast Asia and a diaspora extending across many of the markets Marriott is targeting. Then they anchor the campaign around the Australian Open, one of the world's biggest tennis events and a particularly important destination for the Asia-Pacific audience. And what is one of the key benefits attached to the campaign? Australian Open 2027 ticket access for Marriott Bonvoy members. Now the structure starts to make sense. A traveller wants to experience the Australian Open. Marriott Bonvoy offers early access and exclusive experiences. Alex Eala becomes the face connecting that loyalty program to tennis. The tennis player brings attention. The tournament creates desire. The loyalty program captures the customer. That is bigger than a traditional endorsement. It looks much more like a customer acquisition funnel with a tennis player at the top of it. And suddenly, all four of the paradoxes we started with have a potential explanation. Why move before the US Open?